Everyone's trying to get it right. Get it right. Everybody's working for the weekend. Everybody needs a little romance. Here on a beautiful Sunday. Think bigger, doesn't sleep, it doesn't rest. We got to get this show made. It's kind of cold outside, so let's go in and start shooting. I think I'm early. Well, hey everybody, my name's Jason Stum, your host here on Think Bigger, the show that inspires you to think beyond today and tomorrow so you can achieve your biggest ambitions. And we're back. We're on episode number 2. We didn't get canceled. Hooray! And today we've got something really exciting lined up. I'm going to be joined by Joe Chura, CEO of Launch Digital Marketing and Dealer Inspire. And Joe has an amazing story that he's going to share with you because it wasn't all that long ago that Joe was working on the assembly line for Ford Motor Company. And that story of how he went from that place to this place, the place you see here today, it's a lesson in the think bigger mindset. And I can't wait for you to hear his story. I've only heard parts of it, so being able to sit down with Joe and really pick his brain and learn the things he's actually done that have worked for him, that have helped him grow, launch digital marketing and Dealer Inspire to some of the most respected automotive digital marketing companies in the country today. I'm pumped up, I'm ready to go. So you know what, let's go do it.
Jason, what are you doing here, man?
What are
on
you
a
doing?
Sunday? That's crazy.
What's up, brother? How are you?
Good to see you.
I see you too. Thanks for coming over.
I'm excited to be here. Wait, we have to do the Top Gun. Come on.
Okay. Let's do this. Let's come over here and talk to the one and only Mr. Joe Chura. So thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate that, man.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Cheers. And for the
What is
record,
that on your wrist?
oh, this is a Microsoft Band 2 fitness
Shocking.
tracker.
It's Microsoft.
I did that just for you.
Does that
what
work with
what are
Apple?
you you wearing there?
It's Apple Watch.
I've never heard of it. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for
Oh,
having
I was going to say, for the record, you didn't ask to come on the show. I asked you to come on the show for full
That's right,
transparency.
yeah.
Okay, full transparency. So
I was trying to avoid not being the star of our own show,
right,
but
right. But hey, it's
it was
episode-
inevitable.
It was going to happen at some point in time. We were going to need, a layup episode, right?
I guess we'll do it now.
Let's do it. Let's get out of the way. But seriously though, you have a really interesting story. I've only heard bits and pieces of it, through my short time here and through how we've been connected in the past. So I don't know the whole story, but what I do know is that you've been living a think bigger mindset. It seems like a long time. So what I really want to do is take it all the way back. What was life like for Joe Chura in 1998?
I had a job in downtown Chicago. Found out I was going to be a dad. I lived not too far from the Chicago assembly plant. My friend's parents and a bunch of others that I knew were working at the plant, and it was a good job. Knowing I was going to be a father, I decided to do the responsible thing, and I applied for a job there, and one thing led to another, and I was working at the Ford plant on the assembly line.
So you're there, you're working on the line. Was that at the time where you're just thinking, I'm just trying to get by? Or even then, were you thinking beyond where you were right there?
I had no idea what I was doing. I would lie and say I did. I was just trying to really do the right thing. And I think that's kind of the mindset I've always lived is, if you do the right thing, good things happen. So my first day there, I was brought to a job in the trim department on the assembly line. And I'll never forget this. I was, they have these trainers and they show you how to build a part of the car. So in my instance, I put on the B-pillar, a door rubber, screwed in the seat belt, and this is the 1998 Taurus. So the Tauruses were flying. It was the most popular car, I think, in America at that time. But the one thing I knew very quickly from just watching the atmosphere is you don't stop the line for anything. So you just have to learn really under fire. And then I was I barely made it to lunch. I was just sweating. I had so much anxiety because I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do this. And then finally, like near lunchtime, I was like, oh, this isn't that bad, right? Just like anything, once you get used to a job, it becomes easier. So then right after lunch, the trainer comes up to me and says, now I'm going to teach you the second half of the job. I was only doing 50% of it. So at that time, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, that was only 50% of the job, so I would have to do double the work by the amount of, when a car got to my station. Mm-hmm. By the third day, I was all on my own, if not sooner. So I was struggling. The job was extremely repetitive. I was putting on the B-pillar, scuff plate, seatbelt. I was doing it 72 times an hour, like driving myself crazy. But more importantly, I felt like my creativity was in prison at that point. So instead of complaining about it, I knew this was a great opportunity. I enrolled at St. Xavier University in their marketing and management program. And then I went to school during the day because I was actually working at night. I got pretty fast at building these cars. So as I was going to school, I developed this system where I could read a textbook or read part of a textbook, so really a paragraph. So I'd have my book open at my station. And by the way, don't buy a 98 Taurus for this reason.
I was going to say that.
So it turned out I created this new study habit, and I would just read and retain paragraphs of these textbooks. And I was able to absorb so much information that I graduated magna cum laude. Albeit it took me 5 years to graduate college at that time because I was working full time the whole time. But I did it, and it was awesome. So from there, I was just trying to make any impression I could with anyone I possibly could in that whole plant. And Peter Lawson, who was the plant manager at the time, I would schedule meetings with him, and I would put together these PowerPoint presentations to talk about Ford vehicles, and I would put together these marketing plans. And I wasn't even in the marketing and sales division, so at the time I thought he was somehow connected to marketing, but later I found out in my career that that really the plant manager doesn't talk to marketing and sales that much. But it just kind of goes back to that think bigger mindset. Like, there's a 100% chance something won't happen unless you try, right? So like by me going to his office, I mean, who knew who he knew?
And so some of the stuff we talked about on episode 1 is letting people know that you're after something. If you don't tell people, you never know who's going to have a connection that's going to get you to that next step. And if you keep it all to yourself, and if you don't tell anyone what you want to do, that you have big ambitions, big ideas, how are you ever going to get there?
One day, one of the engineers came up to me and said, hey, listen, I saw a job opening for marketing and sales. And I said, really? That sounds fantastic. He's like, I think you would be great for it.
Did you get that job? Were you able to get that?
Well, so what happened is, as a UAW employee, I couldn't even apply for that job. So Ford had this system where they would post internal jobs, but because I was a UAW worker, there was no way for me to apply for that job and have the right ID or something like that. So the gentleman that told me, I'm forever indebted to, his name is Willis Chin. And Willis is the one that told me about this position. So a couple days passed, and I go up to Willis and I just said, hey, that job you were talking about, can I apply for it under your name? And then just right away say, hey, I'm not Willis Chin. And he said, sure, I don't care, go for it. And I did. And I interviewed for the position, and long story short, I got it. And I would have never got it if I just accepted that barrier that was in front of me and just went with it and said, well, that's too bad, right?
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting, Joe, because it's a common trait you see with a lot of big thinkers is when they encounter an obstacle, they find a creative way around it, because sometimes you can't climb over it, but maybe you can get around it. And that's exactly what you did by using Willis to apply for the job, a job that you got. Mm-hmm. So then what happens next? Now you're marketing sales. Where does it go from here?
So I was calling on, my first position was a select zone manager. So that meant I called on smaller Ford dealers, and I was across the Wisconsin region. Well, the Chicago region was Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, and Indiana, or parts of each. And so I called on, I think I had like 60 dealers at the time. my first zone, and just had a huge passion for it, and I had a lot of respect because I came from the plant. But what happened is that at the time Ford was starting to push out their website program, so they had like these co-op programs and so forth, and I became the de facto digital guy for the region. I was kind of the guy that answered a lot of questions and so forth. So it was just like this. I felt so blessed to have that opportunity, and coming from the plant, I couldn't believe I was getting paid to do that job, to be honest with you. And I thought any day, like, I'd be going back to the assembly line. Like, I didn't, it was kind of crazy going from a UAW Ford assembly line worker to now a corporate employee.
We're still missing a couple pieces of the story here. Where did the opportunity present itself next?
So there was an issue there for me personally, for personal growth. I was young, ambitious. I felt to really get anywhere in the company, I'd have to move. And I didn't really care at the time to move outside of the Chicago region, but I didn't want to leave Ford. And I knew I needed to do something else. So I got my real estate license. And I did that.
Just went out one weekend and got your real estate license?
I had an opportunity to meet some realtors, and I was like, I can sell houses too on the side, and it was a great contract type job that was very flexible, that would earn extra income. So I went to night school to get my real estate license, and I had like 6 listings. I closed 8 homes in 6 months. At the time when I was doing that, I told the regional manager. He knew. He thought it was great. I think that what ended up happening is they didn't know how much I was selling, and so I was called in the office at one point, and they said they pulled up my website, and I guess other zone managers weren't happy that I was selling homes.
It wasn't taking away from your numbers at work, was it? What was behind that, do you think?
It just leaves open an excuse for, hey, you're not answering an email in 2 minutes. Oh, he must be doing something,
Sure.
right? So I think it was just that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
But really, I mean, in terms of my performance, it got better, if anything else, because I worked harder
Right.
to prove that, hey, I can do both of these things.
What came next? Where did you go from there?
Well, that's when I would say I really got in the car business, because I was offered a job as a GM of a Ford store in outstate Illinois.
General manager. Was that had to have been an eye-opening experience to be on the other side of it now?
It reminded me of working on the line. It was crazy. I have so much respect for GMs, and I was handed the keys literally and walked in there with little to no training. I mean really nothing. And I remember someone bringing me a deal. It was a 4-square. And I was supposed to sign off on it. And I looked at it, and I had no clue if it was like a loser or if I was making money on this deal. Like, no clue at all.
You're the best manager to work forever.
But you can't come in as a GM and not know that, right? So I was like, yeah, looks great. So it was just completely nuts. And I learned I didn't have the passion.
Sure.
I didn't even do digital marketing at all. Like, the group wasn't a believer in it. They were a big believer in direct mail pieces, and I was just trying to learn how to run the business. So I had the opportunity to leave. A friend of mine in the Chicago area, he needed help running his BDC. So I came in and was offered a position there, and really just kind of refined the processes, looked at what he was doing, analyzed things, and we ended up just hitting a home run. I mean, our internet sales went up 300% just by implementing processes, everything I learned from being a GM to when I was at Ford, and then having a marketing and digital strategy around it. So I was building websites.
So let's talk about that for a minute. What kind of websites were you building?
Yeah, so it really started with SEO. So when I was a kid, I would be really into programming, but there wasn't websites. There was no web then, right? Yeah. But there was you could code things so I'd code on the Commodore. I mean, when I could build websites, it really started with a drive to learn search engine optimization. So I was really fascinated with it. So when I was mowing the lawn, I was listening to SEO 101 podcast. When I was doing the dishes in the house, I was listening to someone talk about SEO. So I did all these things, and I'm like, you know what? It's great to have that knowledge, but let's see it. Let me practice it. So I built a website called FordEmployeePlan.com. Sure enough, I got like 15, 20,000 visits a month on it. Was ranked organically for, I was beating Ford at the time for like Ford employee discounts. I'm still like ranked in the top 10, and that website's been up for years. I haven't even touched it.
So we've gone through about 12 years of your history here, and you see the same traits reoccurring, and that's what's really impressive is that you're always working as hard as you can. You're using your time wisely as best you can, and you're always trying to get better and smarter. And as you do that, as you're being true to yourself and dedicated to yourself, new opportunities are presenting themselves for you to take advantage of. And then when you get those opportunities, you take advantage of them.
I would put on headphones at night. I'd go on lynda.com, and I would watch Lynda programs, which is, by the way, an awesome resource. And my wife would be watching reality TV. So just would put in so many extra hours outside of the 9 to 5. And then one day she's like, why don't you put a little effort into yourself? And, I don't think she meant that in any way, but, take some of all the extra stuff you're doing. I don't care that you're doing it, but really just learn something for yourself. And that really was pivotal to me to think like, I probably should do that. And I didn't, I was always doing it for someone else.
Right. So what did you do for yourself?
A friend of mine who worked in the auto space, he had a client that just really wanted to learn SEO. And she said, hey, I know you know a lot about it. You want to do a consulting gig out there with me? And next thing you know, we're on a plane to Boulder, Colorado. And I spent 2 days, I had no idea I knew this much information about SEO, but I spent 2 days training the staff at Fisher Auto on search engine optimization. And at the end of that 2 days, Mark Brady, who was the marketing manager there at the time, he turned to me and Matt, and he said, hey, what are your packages? And we looked at each other and smiled, and we're like, we don't have packages. There's no company, And then the light bulbs went off. It's like websites, SEO, learning automotive retail, being at the plant, and all of these things, being a programmer and all of these things, and the passion and drive. And I said, man, we could really build a cool company.
From the line to this point in 2011, everything that you had learned at every previous stop influenced the next thing. And then it's like, ta-da!
I could have said
here
no.
it is.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. I mean, you say, you make, when there's lemons, make lemonade, right?
Yeah.
So really started off launches just as an SEO company, and then a website development, like niche website development company. That was because those were my skills. Mm-hmm. That's what I had.
So how many people in the company at this point in time?
So at this point, it was just me, Matt, and then Jamie was a contractor. So really, I mean, there was hardly anyone. And then in 2011, I think total we had 8 people at the end of the year.
So you tripled your growth in just a year to 8 people, from 3 to 8. Not too bad.
Yeah.
Not too bad. So you're an SEO company. You're a digital company. Yeah. What is the next transition? At what point in time did you realize that there's more that you could do?
Really, SEM was our next play, and that's because a friend of mine soliciting Riverview Ford to be an SEM provider for us, and I took him up on it, and him and I kind of hit it off and became friends. So he took over the SEM side of launch, and so we had SEM, SEO, website development, and then it naturally turned into email marketing, social video production.
That's some serious stuff in terms of what you're adding on. An 8-person company to here we are today. How many employees?
We have 106 launch employees today.
100?
Not including any contractors. And we have about 20 contractors.
Okay. So launch is part of the story, but then obviously you saw a need at some point in time for dealership website development.
The most time that our company spent on things was dealing with other website vendors and companies. We didn't have full control. Not to say we didn't get results from that, we did, but were we maximizing them? At the same time, were we getting enough data to provide answers to dealers to say, hey, what's working, what's not working, right? So we had this idea, and we had a client come to us, a launch client, and he said, hey, would you want to build me a website? And myself and Mark, who is my partner at Dealer Inspire, we built the first iteration of Dealer Inspire ourselves in WordPress, and crazy enough, his leads went up by like 200%. It was fast because it was just one standalone site. It wasn't on a global platform.
Right.
It really became obvious to say, hey, instead of spending a lot of time working on these other websites, why don't we work on our own websites? So we do have two completely separate companies. 2013 is when Dealer Inspire started, and even last year we had 15 employees with Dealer Inspire, and today we have over 60 just dedicated. 90% of them are engineers. We only have 2 salespeople in the whole company.
So 2011 launched digital marketing, 2013 Dealer Inspire. Here we are in 2016, and you've seen just massive growth. I mean, it really is truly. I mean, it's an amazing story, and I'm sure the people who are watching, are inspired by that. But let's do this. Let's give the audience something that they can take away, because I know all of us. I know I do. I bet you the guys recording this do. We all have these big ideas. How do we get them out of our head? How do we get them into reality?
Anything or any obstacle that could be perceived to be in your way, and that's a key word there, perceived, is that you can get around it. You can think bigger. You can think around anything. But second and most importantly, is something that I learned over time, and this is the hard thing about this, is like nothing happens overnight. Like the story, yeah, it's good, but it took so many hours and days of working on something, never knowing if it was going to transpire to anything, right? If you want to be the best, you got to work harder than the next person. You could be the smartest guy in the world. It's not going to really apply. I mean, there's countless stories. I'm no exception. I'm no one special. But there's so many entrepreneurs and people that things just start happening.
Yeah.
In their life because they've put in that effort over time. And that is the biggest takeaway, is that whatever journey you're on, if that's to lose weight, if that's to start a business, if that's to be a better employee, be a better spouse, father, whatever it is, it's the consistency that matters. You're not going to get a reaction from an action to have something profound happen in your life. It just does not happen. It's true.
I don't want to say anything else. I want that to linger. Makes sense to me, man.
Dude.
All right, brother, man. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Really appreciate it, my man. Good times.
Great seeing you.
Oh, thanks for coming in on Sunday.
Yeah, it was good seeing you.
And for you guys, thanks for tuning into this episode of Think Bigger. Really hope you enjoyed the show. Stay tuned. Next week, we'll have an all-new guest where we'll be thinking big here on the show. See you guys later.